resourceful, with the ability...
I'm Batman.
Evil! Fights for all creatures...
In my last video, I went over the shared history of Popeye and the Man of Steel's Superman, and the many connections and crossovers that exist between them. While I had every intention of making another one with two different characters, I just couldn't think of any with such interwoven histories. That was the case, until I began to re-watch some of the early episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants I'd loved so much as a child. Soon I began to notice similarities between the show's retired superhero and a certain familiar bat-themed hero from the pages of DC Comics. In this video I will chronicle the early histories of both characters and the intersections which inevitably join the two together. The year is 1939. The world would be on the brink of yet another world war. Only a year earlier, in the pages of Action Comics #1 by the company that would one day become DC Comics, saw the debut of the Man of Steel, Superman, created by Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster, birthing the superhero into the world. The company knew that they needed to bank upon the success of this newfound genre, and so introduced the character of Batman to the world in the pages of Detective Comics #27. While for many years it was Bob Kane who took the majority of the credit for Batman, it was really Bill Finger who was the true genius behind the character, making him a similarly caped crime fighter as Superman, but with more grounded detective adventures.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
In these early days, many of the character traits of Batman were still rather different to the caped hero we know now. For one, the Dark Knight had no problem in brutally killing criminals, something his modern counterpart is wholly against, save for a few adaptations. Over the years, the Caped Crusader would slowly begin to mould into the character we know and love, with characters such as Robin, the Joker, the Riddler, and his friendship with Superman being established. While being incredibly successful, it was Batman's leap to live action that would grant him mainstream success. The 1966 Batman series was incredibly successful, taking Batman in a more cartoonish and comedic direction compared to his roots as a pulp noir detective. Here he wore a shiny blue outfit, was shown to dance and carry with him outlandish and silly gadgets such as the infamous shark repellent spray. Robin was given a more prominent role in these stories as Bruce Wayne's young ward, and colourful enemies such as Joker, Penguin, Riddler and Mr. Zero, who would later become Mr. Freeze, would become comic mainstays due to this series.
Adam West! Hey kids, Batman!
Dad, that's not the real Batman.
Of course I'm Batman.
While this series may seem like a dramatic departure for the character modern audiences are familiar with, it is still iconic and an influential part of the Batman mythos, influencing much of pop culture to this day, including
Mermaid Man, with his young associate Barnacle Boy, fights for all creatures that live in the sea, against the forces of evil.
Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy first appeared in the Season 1 episode of SpongeBob SquarePants titled, well, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. They are shown to be a crime-fighting duo who used to have their own television series in the world of Bikini Bottom, yet are now retired. SpongeBob and Patrick pay them a visit which aggravates the two into coming out of retirement. They would remain key SpongeBob characters throughout the early seasons of the show, until the passing of their respective voice actors Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway. Their episodes would be numbered, involving them encountering SpongeBob, with him unintentionally making things more difficult for them. Personally, the two characters were always some of my favourites in the show, and the comedic potential of them being retired superheroes could really have been a series on its own.
A double scoop of prune with bran sprinkles.
Of course, the two were heavily inspired by the similar duo of Batman and Robin, particularly the aforementioned 66 series, with the two also being from a television show from presumably the same time period. Their theme song, as well as the use of parody POW graphics, clearly referenced the series. The show even took this a step further by having both Adam West and Burt Ward voice the young Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy respectively in the episode Back to the Past.
Sounds good on paper, you purveyor of pure evil, but fortunately we all know what happens to paper underwater. Barnacle Boy, the tartar sauce.
Coming full circle with the reference. However, the two also draw heavy inspiration from Batman's comic roots, with Mermaid Man's
International Justice League of Super Acquaintances,
parodying the Justice League of America from DC Comics, with its members clearly mirroring Batman's allies Flash, Plastic Man and various others. Their invisible boatmobile is similar to Wonder Woman's invisible jet, and their rings are similar to both the Green Lantern power rings and the Flash ring. The voice references are taken a step further, with Mark Hamill, who voiced Batman's arch nemesis the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, playing the role of the Moth in SpongeBob, who is supposedly Mermaid Man's arch nemesis despite both Dirty Bubble and Man Ray holding that title in previous episodes.
I've worked for you a long time, and I'm paid less than Robin. It's equal pay for men and women.
No time for jokes, Batgirl.
It's no joke.
Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, there has not been a time in which DC Comics has ever referenced Mermaid Man within any piece of Batman media. Although, it is a bit of a coincidence that the 2002 episode, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, saw Mermaid Man's young ward become a villain, which would similarly happen with the second Robin in 2005, becoming the Red Hood, although this is obviously a coincidence. Much like with the comic crossover of Superman and Popeye, it would be very interesting to see DC make a fun comic story in which Batman and Robin fight two undersea heroes, although this may be too similar to the idea of the existing Aquaman for DC. Despite this, I thought it'd be interesting to compile the strengths and weaknesses of both characters to see who would win if the two ever crossed paths. In terms of powers, Mermaid Man has the ability to control underwater sea creatures to do his bidding. He can also swim at extremely fast speeds and create water balls which he can throw at enemies. Furthermore, this undersea hero is also equipped with various gadgets, most notably his utility belt, which is shown to have various different abilities, including a small ray and the most powerful force of all, Wumbo.
Patrick, I don't think Wumbo is a real word.
Come on, you know. I Wumbo, you Wumbo, he, she, me, Wumbo. Wumbo, Wumboing.
I wonder if a fall from this height would be enough to kill me.
Now this is much more than Batman, who has no enhancements or superpowers. His utility belt would similarly come in handy, although not to the extent of Mermaid Man's, holding grappling hooks and batarangs which wouldn't be particularly useful underwater. However, this could also be said of Mermaid Man, with his powers being less useful on land, meaning that this category would most likely depend on the location of the fight. Alternatively, it must also be considered that Mermaid Man isn't exactly in his prime anymore, with him being out of shape and his powers shown to have decreased over time. Batman, on the other hand, has remained around the same age since his inception, with him remaining immortal in the pages of the comics, and DC simply swapping to a newer, younger actor every few years. Except when they don't. This, combined with Batman's prowess in hand-to-hand combat, would mean that he would very likely overpower Mermaid Man in a good old-fashioned fisticuffs fight. It should also be noted that Batman appears to be at least average human height, sometimes taller, while Mermaid Man is a similar size to SpongeBob. This may not seem to be a problem until you remember SpongeBob in comparison to David Hasselhoff. Proving that if the two were to meet, Batman could probably just stomp on Mermaid Man and the fight would be over, unless of course, Mermaid Man could use his utility belt to level the playing field. Intelligence is also key in this matchup, with Batman shown to be one of the most intelligent strategists in the DC universe, able to come up with contingency plans to kill each member of the Justice League on the slight off chance that they turn evil. Mermaid Man, on the other hand, is shown to be comically buffoonish, often having a bad memory as well as being easily tricked by villains such as the Dirty Bubble. This would mean that if Batman were to know of this fight even an hour in advance, he could come up with a way to exploit Mermaid Man's weaknesses and then easily defeat him in battle. In short, despite having fantastical powers, his age, size, and overall land ineffectiveness would likely mean that Mermaid Man would end up defeated by the Dark Knight.
Mermaid Man!
And Barnacle.
Now, it is fascinating to see the development of the iconic Batman and how his influence has extended across popular culture into places such as SpongeBob. However, much like with Superman, Batman continues to be popular to this day, having multiple incarnations running at the same time, often in the same film. Mermaid Man is more like Popeye, having been resorted to a smaller role in SpongeBob during recent seasons and getting very little appearances in outside media. However, in a way, the character will continue to live on through Batman, with young people less familiar with the Dark Knight being more easily able to identify the character and his tropes through his obvious similarities to Mermaid Man, who they may be more familiar with.